just for you to know, what does Wipo actually do in the area of collective management? As you know, Wipo is a UN or special body within the UN family focusing on intellectual property rights and also including copyright and collective management. And my colleague Miyuki and myself, we are actually the CMO team at Wipo, and it's a pleasure to be here and present to you what we are doing in the area of collective management with a focus on Southeast Asia, but also worldwide. You will see here some of our non-normative tools, and all this assistance is actually member states driven. So when we receive a request from member states, we will follow up accordingly. This is non-normative because it's not related to our legislative agenda. As you know, we have WIPO copyright treaties, but this is separate. So we have the Understanding Committee on Copyright and Related Rights that meets twice a year usually and speaks about treaties. It's the treaty-making body. But here we want to focus on our non-normative tools in the area of collective management. We do a lot of technical assistance, and usually we start with legislative advice. We look at the law, we look at the CMO regulations, but that can go further even into looking at the statutes and so on, depending on the request at hand. And it can be a fully fledged project over several months or years even, or also just focusing on certain awareness raising activities like we do now. And it can be together often actually with the international federations, the umbrella federations in the area of collective management that you have represented here. So many of our activities are together with CSAC in the area of music, with IFPI and SCAPA for music related rights, with IFRO in the area of text based works. And we also cooperate with CSAC and EVA, for instance, in the area of visual art. So together we have our technical assistance activities. I will come back to some examples in the region later in this regard. This is a tool that is at the disposal of our member states, but also any other stakeholders, whether it's CMOs or other rights holders. It is a completely voluntary tool. It is based on good practices assembled from all over the world. And these are then distilled into tools at the discretion of the member states and other stakeholders to use them as they please and deem appropriate. We will speak a bit more about the toolkit later, so I will not delve too much into detail here. It is available on the WIPO website. We are updating it every 2 years. And as I said, we will speak a bit more in detail later. Apart from that, we also have the WIPO Academy. The WIPO Academy offers several courses in the area of collective management and also capacity building activities. Those are both distance learning courses, but also in-person trainings. With the pandemic, of course, more and more webinar-based activities. We have Wipo Connect. Wipo Connect is an IT solution for CMOs developed by Wipo, offered to the member states and CMOs upon request by the member states as well. We have the Wipo Arbitration and Mediation Center. They have specific rules in the area of arbitration and mediation for CMOs with also reduced fees. And finally, we have the Building Respect for IP initiatives. Those are our colleagues that are working on anti-piracy activities and enforcement or training of judges, for instance. They are specialized in that area, and they also work in the area of collective management. I mentioned legislative advice earlier. I just wanted to highlight that this is, as I said, demand-driven by member states. It is always tailor-made. There are no costs involved for member states. It is non-binding and it is confidential. So as long as the member states are not disclosing our comments, we won't do so either. And as I said, this is usually what we start. So before we provide technical assistance, we usually look together with the member states, together with the CMOs at the legal framework, and to ensure that we have the full holistic approach when we start our activities. Some examples from the region. We have an ongoing project with Cambodia. We helped actually together with our international partners, especially CSAC, IFBI, SCAPA, and also the Japanese CMOs, JASRAC, to establish a CMO in Cambodia. And we had a tariff setting webinar specifically now in September, together with the international federations. That is one example on how we helped. In Malaysia, we have a longer project already, a project to establish a new CMO for text and image-based works, a so-called reproduction rights organization, an RRO, which is called MARC, together with IFRO, the International Federation of Reproduction Rights Organizations. And I know that you will hear from Caroline Morgan more about this project, so I will not go too much into detail here. But in a nutshell, we help together with the authors and publishers in Malaysia, and of course with the support of the government of my IPO, to establish the CMO MARC. And it has been established in August, and we are very pleased to see that result. In the Philippines, we are about to start a NARICOM project. A NARICOM project is a project in the area of music neighboring rights. And we do this together with SCAPA, the International Federation Representing Performers, and you will hear from me soon, as well as with IFBI. You will hear from Yeva as well. So IFBI is representing the phonogram producers. And we had a webinar with the Philippines on supervision and monitoring of a CMO earlier this year. Apart from that, we often and on a regular basis offer training workshops to officials and managers of new and emerging CMOs. We had one, for instance, including Cambodia and Laos, but other countries from the region were also involved. So there was also Bangladesh, Mongolia, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. And again, we cooperated very closely with international umbrella federations in the area of collective management. And this was also together with Japan and the Japanese CMOs. I mentioned the Wipo Good Practice Toolkit at the beginning. And as I said, it's non-normative. It compiles examples of legislation, regulation, and codes of conduct from everywhere around the world. It also includes, by the way, the EU Collective Rights Management Directive and other examples from your region as well as the codes of conduct of the international umbrella federations. Please feel free to have a look at it. It is available on the Wipo website. As I said, it has just been updated because we update it every 2 years. It is the result of a consultation process with all Wipo member states and observers. And this is the result. It's published in all UN languages and Portuguese. The first version was published in 2018, and now we have the current version. And what is different in the current version from the previous versions? Well, firstly, we need to regularly update laws and regulations and also codes of conduct because they change. But this time we also received proposals to include new chapters. With the digital development and so on, the importance of IT infrastructure is more and more important. And there is a new chapter, chapter 10 in this regard, which also looks at metadata, standards, identifiers that are required and in order for CMOs to function properly in the digital era. So this is a new chapter, and then there is also a new chapter for obligations of users, so obligations of licensees. So for instance, for them to provide information for the CMO, to the CMO. In addition to that, we also tried to make the document more user-friendly, to include hyperlinks and so on. The next update is foreseen in 2 years. The structure is always the same. There is a short explanation first of why attention should be given to a particular issue. This explanation is, of course, not exhaustive. And then you have the examples of good practice from codes, regulation, or regulation from anywhere around the world. And these are then in turn distilled into the good practice tools, which is a menu of optional tools for consideration by member states and other stakeholders. The content is, at the moment, we have 13 chapters, and I won't go too much into detail here, but you will see that in addition to the new chapters, so which I said, the relationship between the CMO and the user, a licensee, as well as the importance of IT infrastructure, you have a lot focusing especially on transparency and good governance of CMOs. So on the providing of information via CMOs, on the membership, how to become a member, how to withdraw from membership, the members' rights to fair treatment, their position in the CMO, but then also particular issues concerning the CMO-member relationship that might come up. There is also a chapter on financial administration, distribution of revenue and deductions. That includes also tariff setting, for instance, the provisions that are in some laws or regulations in this regard. And as regards the distribution of revenue and deductions, you'll know that there are social, cultural deductions as an option, and examples from all over the world are also included here. Of course, there's also the relationship between the CMOs and the importance of bilateral or reciprocal agreements, the processing of members and users' license, and as well as licensees' data, the development of staff skills and awareness, complaints and dispute resolution procedures, so that includes also arbitration and mediation, and the supervision and monitoring of CMOs, including codes of conduct that are voluntary, but also those that go into legislative and more normative options for member states to consider in order to supervise or monitor CMOs. So that's all from my side. Thank you so much.